What if you could rebuild Rome from its ashes? But this time, you had to balance the wrath of the gods, the needs of your citizens, and the brutal reality that one wrong move with water management could destroy everything. Nova Roma is a city builder that takes the glory of ancient Rome and asks you to prove you're worthy of it. This isn't just another city builder where you place roads and houses. This is something deeper, something that demands real thought and consequences. Stay with me through this first look, because what I'm about to show you is how Rome should actually be built. From the moment I started Nova Roma, I could feel the weight of what the game was asking me to do. The Roman Empire is crumbling, falling into decay and chaos, and you're leading a small group of people searching for new lands with one goal: build Nova Roma, a bastion of everything that was once good about the empire. You start with essentially nothing, a modest village and a dream, and you need to turn that into a society that will be the pride of the world for thousands of years. No pressure, right? What immediately sets Nova Roma apart from other city builders is how it treats the act of construction and planning. This isn't a game where you can just spam buildings wherever there's space and watch your city grow. Every decision about placement, about infrastructure, about resource allocation has consequences that ripple through your entire civilization. The game is built around these interconnected systems that force you to think long-term and plan carefully. And honestly, that's exactly what makes it compelling. The water management system is probably the most striking and unique feature. Water isn't just a resource you extract from a source and pipe to buildings. It's a living, flowing element that you need to genuinely understand and control. You can build massive dams and aqueducts, reshape the landscape to create artificial reservoirs and water storage, redirect rivers and streams. But every action you take with water affects the fertility of the soil around it. Flood an area, and it might become more fertile for farming, or you might create stagnant pools that breed disease. Drain water away from one region and watch as previously productive farmland becomes barren. I spent hours just experimenting with the water systems, trying to figure out optimal configurations. Building an aqueduct isn't just about connecting point A to point B. You need to consider elevation, flow rate, how it affects downstream areas, whether you're stealing water that other parts of your city need. The physics of it feel realistic enough that you're genuinely solving engineering problems, not just playing with decorative elements. And when you finally get it right, when water is flowing exactly where you need it and your farms are thriving and your citizens have clean water, it feels like a legitimate accomplishment. The resource gathering and production chains have this satisfying complexity. You're not just clicking on a forest to get wood. You need to find distant resource deposits, plan expeditions to reach them, build the infrastructure to transport those raw materials back to your city, then construct workshops to process them into finished goods. Early game, this might mean simple things like getting clay to make pottery. Late game, you're managing these sprawling supply networks that span huge areas of untamed territory, with carts and roads and storage facilities all working together. What makes the logistics challenging is the scale. The map is genuinely large, and resources aren't conveniently clustered near your starting location. That iron deposit you need? It's miles away across difficult terrain. You'll need to build roads, establish way stations, maybe even found small satellite settlements just to extract and transport what you need. The game forces you to think like an actual empire builder, not just a city planner. You're dealing with the realities of distance, terrain, and the logistical nightmare of keeping a growing civilization supplied. The needs and desires of your population add another layer of complexity. Citizens start with basic needs like food and shelter, but as your city grows and prospers, their expectations increase. They want pottery, wine, bread, entertainment in the form of games, education, religious fulfillment. The list keeps expanding, and keeping everyone satisfied becomes this juggling act where you're constantly evaluating priorities. Do you invest in entertainment to keep morale high, or do you focus on expanding food production because your population is growing faster than your supply? What I really appreciate is how the game simulates individual citizens, rather than just treating population as a number. You can follow people through their daily lives, watching them work during the day and enjoy the fruits of their labor at night. They become craftsmen, gladiators, actors. They have routines and behaviors that make the city feel genuinely alive. This level of simulation adds so much to the immersion. You're not managing abstract resources, you're guiding actual people through their lives. And that connection makes you care more about the decisions you make. The social and cultural aspects are woven throughout the gameplay. You're managing taxes, making decisions about technological advancement, establishing laws that shape how your society functions. But hanging over all of this are the gods. This is ancient Rome, and divine favor matters. You need to build grand temples dedicated to various deities, perform rituals, make offerings. Neglect the gods and you risk their wrath, which can manifest as disasters, plagues, or other catastrophes that can devastate your carefully planned city. The religious system isn't just window dressing. It's a genuine gameplay consideration that affects your planning and resource allocation. Building a massive temple is expensive and time-consuming, but the blessings you receive can be game-changing. Maybe a god grants improved fertility to your fields, or protects your city from disease, or blesses your craftsmen with increased productivity. Balancing the material needs of your citizens with the spiritual requirements of divine appeasement creates interesting dilemmas. Do you spend resources on a new granary, or on completing that temple before the gods grow impatient? The threat of divine intervention adds this element of unpredictability that keeps you on your toes. You can have everything running smoothly, and then the gods decide you haven't been sufficiently respectful, and suddenly you're dealing with a crisis. It forces you to always keep some resources in reserve, to not overextend, to maintain that balance between growth and caution. Some players might find this frustrating, but I think it captures something authentic about how ancient civilizations viewed their relationship with the divine. Graphically, Nova Roma has this clean, stylized look that prioritizes readability and atmosphere over photorealism. The camera can zoom out to show your entire sprawling city and the surrounding landscape, or zoom in close enough to watch individual citizens going about their business. The Roman architecture is rendered with enough detail to be recognizable and aesthetically pleasing without being so complex that it clutters the screen. Water looks particularly good, flowing naturally through aqueducts and pooling in reservoirs with realistic physics. The visual feedback for various systems is well implemented. You can toggle overlays that show water flow, soil fertility, citizen satisfaction, resource distribution, and other critical information. These overlays make the complex simulation readable and help you diagnose problems without having to dig through endless menus. When something is wrong in your city, you can usually see it visually, whether it's citizens wandering aimlessly because they can't find work, or crops withering because water isn't reaching them. The seasons and weather affect both the visuals and the gameplay. Watching your city transition from the green abundance of spring and summer to the harsher conditions of winter creates this sense of time passing and cycles repeating. Different seasons bring different challenges and opportunities. Crops have growing seasons. Water availability changes. Certain activities become more or less efficient. You need to plan around these cycles, storing surplus during abundant times to survive leaner periods. Now, to address the multiplayer question directly, Nova Roma is a single-player experience. There's no co-op mode, no competitive multiplayer, and honestly, that's the right decision for this type of game. This is a slow, methodical city builder focused on long-term planning and dealing with complex, interconnected systems. It's contemplative rather than frantic. Adding multiplayer would fundamentally change what makes the game work. This is about your vision for rebuilding Rome, your decisions and their consequences, and that personal journey is best experienced solo. The pacing of Nova Roma is deliberately measured. This isn't a game where you're constantly being pushed to expand rapidly or respond to immediate threats. Yes, there are challenges and crises, but much of the gameplay is about thoughtful planning and watching your carefully laid plans come to fruition over time. Early game can feel slow as you're establishing basic infrastructure and learning the systems. Mid to late game, when you've got multiple production chains running and you're managing a large population with complex needs, the pace picks up considerably, but it's never frantic. The difficulty comes not from time pressure or overwhelming opposition, but from the complexity of keeping everything balanced. It's easy to overextend yourself, to expand faster than your supply chains can support, to neglect some aspect of city management until it becomes a critical problem. The game punishes poor planning and rewards careful thought. When things go wrong, it's almost always because of decisions you made, not because the game threw something unfair at you. The technological progression adds another dimension to the gameplay. As you advance through different eras, you unlock new buildings, new production methods, new capabilities. Early Rome looks and functions differently from late Rome. This progression gives you a sense of your civilization evolving and advancing, not just growing larger. New technologies can solve old problems, but often introduce new considerations. More advanced buildings might be more efficient, but also more expensive to maintain, or require rare resources you need to secure. One aspect I find particularly engaging is the challenge of balancing rapid expansion with stability. You can grow quickly if you're willing to accept shortages, instability, and unhappy citizens. Or you can grow slowly, making sure every need is met before adding more population, but potentially missing opportunities or falling behind in development. There's no single correct approach, and different playstyles will find different paths to success. The game respects your agency and lets you make these fundamental strategic choices. The cultural and societal trials of the era that the game explores add historical flavor without being heavy-handed. You're not just building a generic ancient city, you're specifically rebuilding Roman civilization with all its particular characteristics, values, and challenges. The game captures elements of what made Rome both great and complicated. The engineering prowess, the complex social structures, the religious beliefs, the constant tension between expansion and consolidation. The UI and controls are functional, though there's definitely a learning curve. City builders of this depth inevitably have lots of information to convey and many options to manage, and Nova Roma is no exception. The menus are organized logically once you understand the structure, but new players will spend time figuring out where everything is and how different systems interact. The game could benefit from more comprehensive tutorials or guidance, but there's also something satisfying about figuring things out through experimentation and observation. Performance has been solid in my experience. The simulation of water, citizens, production chains, and all the other systems runs smoothly, even when your city grows large and complex. There's a lot happening under the hood, and the fact that it maintains stable performance is impressive. Load times are reasonable, and I haven't encountered any game-breaking bugs or technical issues that interrupted the experience. The soundtrack contributes nicely to the atmosphere without being obtrusive. Roman-inspired musical themes play in the background, creating an appropriate mood without demanding attention. Ambient sounds of city life, construction, water flowing, citizens talking, all layer together to make your city feel inhabited and active. The audio isn't groundbreaking, but it's effective at supporting the overall experience. What keeps bringing me back to Nova Roma is how it makes you think about city building differently. Most games in this genre are about optimization and efficiency, about finding the perfect layout and maxing out production. Nova Roma is certainly about those things too, but it's also about adapting to circumstances, dealing with unforeseen consequences, and accepting that perfection might not be achievable. Your city will have flaws and problems, and managing those imperfections is part of the experience. The game has that one more turn quality, where you tell yourself you'll just finish building this aqueduct, or just get through one more season, or just unlock this next technology, and suddenly hours have passed. The progression is compelling enough that there's always something meaningful to work toward, some next goal that feels achievable and worthwhile. And because the systems are so interconnected, progress in one area often creates new opportunities or challenges in others, keeping the gameplay dynamic. Nova Roma is a city builder for players who want depth, who appreciate complex systems and long-term consequences, and who find satisfaction in careful planning and problem-solving. It's not the most accessible game in the genre, and it demands patience and thought. But for players willing to engage with what it's offering, there's a really rewarding experience here. If you've ever wanted to truly understand what it took to build and maintain a Roman city, this is your chance. Let me know in the comments if you're drawn to complex city builders like this, or if you prefer something more streamlined. Thanks for watching this first look, and I'll see you in the next one.